How to grow onions. Learn everything you need to grow onions successfully. Onions are a common and incredibly practical vegetable. Whether you're stirring, frying, making soup, or preparing a salad, they show up in all kinds of dishes. They are rich in nutrients like vitamin C, potassium, zinc, and selenium, as well as beneficial compounds, such as quercetin and prostaglandin A, which help boost the immune system and support overall health. Interestingly, the part of the onion we eat isn't actually the root. It's a swollen underground stem known as a bulb. Onions originated in Central Asia and later spread across the world, becoming one of the most popular vegetables in home gardens today. Whether you grow them directly in the ground or in containers, you can still enjoy a rewarding harvest. However, growing onions from seeds can take quite a bit of time and care. If you're just getting started, it's usually easier to begin with young seedlings or onion sets. They're much simpler to handle and give you a better chance of success. Onion varieties are usually categorized by their days to maturity, so you'll often see early, mid, and late maturing types. Each one follows its own timeline for planting, growing, and harvesting, and choosing the right variety for your climate really makes a difference. Early maturing onion varieties have a shorter growing cycle and can usually be harvested in spring. However, they don't store well for long periods. Many of these early types are sweet and mild, making them perfect for eating fresh or adding to salads. Late maturing varieties take longer to grow and are usually ready for harvest from late spring to early fall. They're better suited for cooking in hot dishes. Generally, the stronger, more pungent onions are best for cooking, while sweet and red onions are perfect for eating raw in salads or sandwiches. Growing onions takes quite a long time, but the reward at harvest is truly satisfying. If you live in a mild climate, like USDA Zone 7 or warmer, you can grow what's called overwintering onions. These are planted from late summer through early fall, when temperatures are around 68 to 82 F20 to 28 C. And they'll grow through winter until the following spring. But if you're in a colder region, where the ground freezes in winter, don't worry, you can still grow onions successfully. You'll just need to start your seeds indoors in early spring, or use transplants once the danger of frost has passed. Either way, you can enjoy a great harvest. It all just depends on your local climate. If you start with seedlings, you can harvest in about 6 months. But if you plant from seeds, it usually takes around 8 months. When you are growing onions, good crop rotation is key. Try not to plant them in the same spot year after year, and avoid following them with other alliums like garlic, leeks, or chives. Rotating crops every 2 to 3 years helps keep the soil healthy and your onions strong and productive. Welcome to Vegetable Beginner's Guide. If you're passionate about growing your own food and embracing nature, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on our awesome tips and tricks. Let's jump right into today's exciting topic: container and soil preparation. If you're growing onions in a container, it's best to use a medium to large planter at least 60 centimeters long. But onions don't have very deep roots, so as long as the pot drains well, even a shallower container will work just fine. Onions grow best when spaced about 10 to 15 centimeters apart. In a medium planter around 60 centimeters long, you can usually fit 8 to 10 plants comfortably. If you already have a planter, just adjust the number of onions based on its size. As for planting soil, you can use pre-mixed potting soil. It's ready to use straight from the bag and super convenient. If you prefer making your own potting mix, a good ratio is 7 parts Akadama soil, 2 parts compost, and 1 part vermiculite. For every 10 liters of soil, add 10 to 20 grams of dolomitic lime, and 10 to 20 grams of regular fertilizer. Mix everything well. It's best to prepare the soil about 2 weeks before planting, and apply the base fertilizer a week ahead. When filling your planter with soil, leave about 5 centimeters of space at the top. This prevents soil from spilling over when watering or when it rains. It also makes it easier to add more soil or fertilizer later on, instead of struggling with a planter that's too full. Preparing in-ground garden bed. For outdoor planting, Start preparing your bed about 2 weeks before planting. Remove any stones, fallen leaves, and leftover roots from previous crops to get the soil ready. Onions don't do well in acidic soils, so it's best to keep the soil pH between 6.0 and 6.5. To raise the soil pH by about 1.0, you'll need roughly 400 grams of lime per square meter. Avoid applying lime right before planting because its alkalinity can harm the roots. Instead, add it about 2 weeks in advance so the soil has time to neutralize. About a week before sowing or transplanting, apply 2 kilograms of compost, 100 grams of balanced fertilizer 15-15-15, and 50 grams of thermal processed phosphate fertilizer per square meter. Turn and level the soil, making sure the base fertilizer is evenly spread across the entire planting area. The ideal planting bed for onions is a flat bed with a height of about 10 centimeters. Adjust the bed width based on the number of rows. A single row needs around 30 centimeters, while 2 rows require roughly 60 centimeters. For late maturing varieties, roots can lift during frosty, cold weather, so it's important to orient the beds east to west depending on sunlight. Sowing. The growth rate of onions depends on the variety and the environment. Usually, it takes about 50 to 60 days from germination for seedlings to grow big enough to transplant. You can start seedlings in trays or other individual containers. Usually sowing in late summer to early autumn when temperatures are around 68-80 to F20-28 C. Larger seedlings can then be transplanted to the fields after late autumn. You can also sow directly in the field, but starting in trays first allows you to grow other vegetables in the meantime, making better use of your land. For early maturing varieties, the best time to sow is usually late summer to early autumn. For mid to late maturing varieties, sow from early to mid-autumn when temperatures are around 68 to 77 F20 to 25 C. Exact timing can vary depending on the variety and your region, so it's recommended to check in advance. You can also work backwards from your transplanting date to deciding when to sow. Start sowing roughly 7 to 8 weeks before you plan to move the seedlings. For example, if you plan to transplant in mid-autumn, sowing in late summer to early autumn usually works best. Watch your timing carefully. If you sow too early, the seedlings may grow too large by transplanting time, which can cause the bulbs to crack or bolt prematurely. Onion seeds germinate best at 59 to 68 F15 to 20 C, and you should see sprouts in about 7 to 10 days. If the soil is too cold for too long, germination can drop a lot, so make sure not to delay sowing in cooler climates. Getting the timing right will help you grow big, healthy bulbs. If you're sowing directly in the garden, use a stick or similar tool to make shallow rows, spacing the seeds about 1 centimeter apart. Then gently push the soil from both sides to cover them with about 5-10 millimeters of fine soil and leave around 20 centimeters between each row. If you are planting just a few onions, you can try spot sowing. This means planting a small cluster of 5 to 7 seeds in one spot, with each cluster about 10 centimeters apart. When sowing in seed trays, you can use the broadcast method. Level the surface of the seedling soil, then scatter the seeds evenly about 1 centimeter apart. Be careful not to sow over the same spots twice. Onion seeds are very sensitive to dryness. You can cover them with a piece of non-woven fabric or some rice husks to keep them moist before they germinate. Once the seedlings start to sprout and develop true leaves, remove the fabric. If you're using rice husks, you can leave them in place, which also helps prevent the young shoots from drying out. Onion seeds are extremely tiny, which makes them easy to wash away or float to the surface during watering or rainfall. Also, gaps between the seeds and soil can also prevent proper moisture absorption, often causing uneven germination, or worse, seeds that fail to sprout entirely. To prevent this, there's one final crucial step after sowing: gently press the soil down with your hands. This ensures each seed has firm contact with the moist soil, giving it the best chance to sprout successfully. Tips for sowing. Cover the seeds with a thin layer of fine soil, using a sieve or similar tool, trying to keep the thickness even. This helps the seeds sprout more uniformly. When sowing directly in your garden bed, young seedlings have to compete with weeds that can steal water and nutrients. A simple way to help is to lightly mulch around your plants with rice hulls. This helps suppress weeds while keeping your onions healthy. Thinning the seedlings. If you sowed your onion seeds directly in the garden bed, you'll usually need to thin them out 3 times. For transplanted seedlings, thinning about twice is usually enough. Newly sprouted seedlings often appear bent in the middle, but they will straighten as they grow. When you do the first thinning, the main goal is to remove seedlings that are overlapping or too crowded. This prevents them from competing for water, nutrients, and sunlight, helping each plant grow strong and healthy. Once your seedlings have 2 to 3 true leaves, it's time for the second thinning. Space them about 2 centimeters apart. For seedlings you plan to transplant, this is the last thinning. Keep them fairly close together until you move them to their permanent spot. If seedlings are spaced too far apart, they can grow too vigorously and produce oversized bulbs at transplanting. If they're too close together, growth is restricted, and the bulbs may end up too small. For direct sown onions, the final thinning usually happens in spring, when seedlings are growing most vigorously. Typically when temperatures are around 50 to 60 F10 to 15 C. At this stage, spacing the plants about 10 to 15 centimeters apart, planting them individually. As a bonus, the seedlings you remove can be eaten. The onion greens make a delicious addition to your dishes. Transplanting onion seedlings. Onion seeds have a short sowing window, and raising seedlings takes time and effort. If you find sowing and starting seedlings challenging, you can always buy young seedlings and plant them directly. Seedlings about 20 to 25 centimeters tall, with roots roughly 7 to 9 millimeters in diameter, about the thickness of a pencil, are the ideal size for transplanting. Seedlings with roots that are too thick over 10 millimeters can bolt in spring, while those that are too thin under 5 millimeters are more susceptible to frost damage. Besides checking the stem thickness, you can also judge seedlings by weight. Seedlings weighing 5 grams to 7 grams are ideal. Those under 4 grams may struggle to survive the winter, while seedlings over 8 grams are more likely to bolt in early spring. Also, look for seedlings with dark green leaves and healthy, non-wilted tips for the best quality. To ensure uniform bulb size at harvest, you can sort seedlings by thickness when transplanting. Mixing thick and thin seedlings can lead to poorly developed bulbs, because the thicker seedlings may outcompete the thinner ones. Onions grow best at temperatures between 60 and 75 F15 and 20 for C. The ideal time to transplant depends on the variety and your region. In colder regions, autumn is best. In temperate areas, aim for mid-autumn. And in warmer regions, late autumn works well. How to transplant seedlings. When transplanting onion seedlings, plant the white part of the roots into the soil to a depth of about the length of your index finger's second joint, so that roughly half of the leaf sheath is buried. Gently bring the soil up around the base of the plant, but don't cover the leaf sheath completely. After transplanting, press the soil firmly around the seedlings to ensure good contact between the roots and soil. This helps the roots establish and grow strong. If the roots aren't well anchored in the soil, seedlings can lift out during frost or cold weather. So make sure the roots are properly planted and in good contact with the soil. When planting, be careful not to bury any split parts of the stem. Planting too deep can stunt growth or cause the bulbs to become spindle-shaped. If planted too shallow, or if the roots aren't well covered with soil, frost heaving or freezing can lift the roots out of the ground. After transplanting, the tips of the seedlings may turn brown and look a bit wilted. Don't worry, once new roots start growing, the seedlings will recover and return to healthy growth. Planting from onion sets. Another easy way to grow onions is by using onion sets, small, immature bulbs that are especially beginner-friendly. You can find these sets at most garden centers. When choosing them, look for bulbs that are firm, healthy looking, and have a bit of root growth at the bottom. If you plant your onion sets in late spring, maybe March, when daytime temperatures are around 68 to 82 F 20 to 28 C, you can usually expect to harvest your onions by the end of the year. When planting onion sets, start by making shallow furrows in the soil, about 1 centimeter deep. Space each bulb about 10-15 centimeters apart, with about 15-20 centimeters between rows. Place each bulb in the furrow, so that the top third of the bulb stays above the soil surface. After planting, water gently to keep the soil evenly moist. Within about 7 to 10 days, you'll start to see the first green shoots emerging, and the bulbs will gradually grow into healthy young plants. Tips for transplanting. The key to growing high-quality onions lies in timing your planting just right. If you transplant too late in the season, your seedlings won't have enough time to develop a strong root system before the cold weather sets in. Once temperatures start dropping below about 50 F10 C, the growth of young onions slows dramatically. If their roots aren't well established by then, the plants might struggle to survive the winter and could end up withering away. During the colder part of the season, you can use plastic mulch or other covers to help warm the soil. This not only encourages your onions to grow better, but also helps suppress weed growth. After transplanting, it's a good idea to mound some soil gently around the base of each plant from time to time. This helps support the seedlings and prevents them from falling over. Keep doing this until the bulbs begin to swell. Watering. From the moment you sow your seeds until they sprout, it's really important to keep the soil surface evenly moist. If you notice the top layer starting to dry out, make sure to water right away. But be careful watering at night, or letting the soil get too dry or too soggy can all affect germination. The key is to keep the moisture just right, so your seeds can sprout evenly and stay healthy. During the first week after transplanting, water the seedlings thoroughly to help them establish roots quickly. After that, keep the soil slightly drier, which encourages healthy growth. For onions grown in the field, natural rainfall is usually enough. But during extended drying periods, make sure to water as needed. From germination until the seedlings develop 2 true leaves, growth is relatively slow and the roots aren't fully established. Keep the soil slightly moist during this stage. No need to overwater, as too much moisture may lead to pests and diseases. When the seedlings have about 4 true leaves, they enter a rapid growth stage for stems and leaves. Keep the soil moderately moist so the roots have enough water to support growth. Avoid waterlogging to prevent the seedlings from becoming soft and leggy. It's best to water in the morning, as watering in the afternoon can lead to standing water overnight. Onions still need watering in winter. When temperatures are low, it's best to water in the morning when it's warmer. In colder regions, keep the soil surface dry in the evening to prevent it from freezing overnight. When onions enter the bulb swelling stage, water according to the soil's moisture. Too dry, and the bulbs won't develop well. Too wet, and they may rot. The key is to keep the soil slightly moist the water whenever the surface starts to dry. No need to water every day. For potted onions, water thoroughly so it reaches the bottom of the pot, allowing a little to overflow. For field-grown onions, give each plant about 1.0 to 1.5 liter of water per watering. In both cases, make sure the moisture penetrates deep into the soil, not just the surface. Tips for watering. In cold winter, onion seedlings grow slowly. But keeping the soil moderately moist helps them transition smoothly into the bulb swelling stage when temperatures rise in early spring. As the weather warms and the sun gets stronger, the soil can dry out quickly, especially during long stretches of sunny days. So be sure to water in time, to prevent the plants from suffering due to lack of moisture. In the final stage before harvest, gradually reduce and stop watering. Continuing to water too close to harvest can cause the bulbs to take up too much moisture, making them more prone to rot during storage. Top dressing. The timing of fertilizing onions depends on the variety and climate. Early maturing varieties generally needed one application of fertilizers in late winter to early spring, while mid to late maturing varieties benefit from fertilizing 3 times: early winter, late winter, and early spring. Although growth is slower in cold weather, fertilizing during this period is very important. Winter fertilization helps prevent premature bolting in early spring, while early spring fertilization encourages bulb swelling. For potted onions, sprinkle about 3–5 grams of compound fertilizer on the soil surface each time you fertilize. Gently mix it into the top layer of soil and then work it down toward the roots. For field-grown onions, sprinkle about 20–30 grams of compound fertilizer per square meter between the rows. Mix it into the top layer of soil and mound it onto the bed edges. If you're planting onion sets, you only need to fertilize once, about a month after planting. Apply 5 to 10 grams of fertilizer around each plant, mix it into the topsoil, and mound it back around the roots. Tips for top dressing. Once temperatures rise above around 68°F in late spring, no more applying fertilizers, as this can trigger diseases or bulb rot. Slow-release fertilizers, like composts or organic fertilizers, take time to work, so apply them 2 to 3 weeks in advance. For potted onions, you can add diluted liquid fertilizer each time you water, providing a steady supply of nutrients. Hilling the soil while fertilizing helps stabilize the plants and prevents them from falling over. Harvesting. Onions take about 7 to 8 months from transplanting to harvesting. As temperatures rise to around 59–68°F in late spring, the leaves gradually start to fall over. About a week after roughly 70–80% of the leaves have fallen, it's the best time to harvest. The harvest period varies depending on the variety and growing region. Generally, early maturing varieties and onions are grown from sets. They can be harvested from early autumn to late spring, while mid to late maturing varieties are best harvested from late spring to early fall. If you harvest too late, onions will split, become soft, and have reduced storage life. That's why timing the harvest carefully is so important. When harvesting, grab the stem near the bulb and gently pull the whole plant out. Don't cut the leaves right away, leaving about 15 centimeters of foliage. This helps prevent the onions from sprouting again, extending their storage life. It's best to harvest on consecutive sunny days. If harvesting is delayed due to rain, the bulbs can take up too much moisture, making them more prone to rot during storage. After harvesting, lay the onions out in the field to dry for 1 day, allowing both the leaves and bulbs to dry thoroughly. If they aren't dried enough, milky juice can ooze from the cut ends, leading to mold or rot. Also, if you transplant onions too late, cold weather 50°F or below may cause them to bolt and form flowers. The flower buds that form after bolting are commonly Caledonian scapes. Once onion scapes form, the center of the bulb becomes hard, the texture worsens, and it's no longer ideal for eating. However, if you remove the tough inner core, the outer layers can still be used for cooking. If bolting occurs, it's best to cut the scapes before they fully develop. Snip about 5–6 centimeters above the stem's fork. Plants that have had their scapes removed can continue growing and are used as green onions. Even in the early bulb stage, when the leaves are still tender, you can harvest a small amount as baby onions or onion greens. These young onion leaves have a fresh, fragrant flavor, and are excellent in hot pots, stir-fries, or tempura. Once the onions are dried, trim off the excess leaves, leaving about 5–10 centimeters of stem. Tie 5 to 10 onions together in a bunch and hang them in a well-ventilated, rain-free spot for long-term storage. Make sure the TIs are a little loose to avoid cutting into the stems, which can cause rot and leaf drops. If you don't have a suitable space to hang them, you can also lay the onions flat in a basket or on a mesh rack. Just make sure not to stack them and keep them dry and well ventilated. Pest and disease control. Although pests aren't usually a major problem for onions, it's still important to check regularly. Common pests include aphids, onion thrips, cutworm moths, onion leaf miners, mites, and leek fly mites. These pests typically don't cause serious damage, but sap-sucking pests like aphids can spread viral diseases. If you spot any, take action immediately to prevent their numbers from increasing. Controlling pests before they form large populations can greatly reduce damage. Most of the onion's growing cycle occurs at cooler temperatures, around 50 to 68 F10 to 20 C, when pest activity is low, making onions relatively easy to manage compared to other vegetables. However, in early autumn and early spring, when temperatures rise, pests may become more active. So pay close attention to the leaves and young seedlings during these periods. Onions are prone to several diseases, including rot, rust, downy mildew, basal rot, black spot, and gray mold. Among these, downy mildew is one of the most common and damaging diseases for onions. Infected leaves may gradually turn yellow and dry out, starting from the tips or middle sections, and severe cases can even affect bulb development. Several factors can contribute to this disease, such as overly wet soil, planting too deep, or applying too much high nitrogen fertilizer, all of which can hinder root growth and make the soil more acidic and less well aerated. If you spot any infected plants, remove them promptly to prevent the disease from spreading. Also, improve drainage and ventilation, and keep the soil slightly dry to reduce the growth of pathogens. In severe cases, appropriate use of pesticides can help control the disease. That covers all the key points for growing onions. Hope this guide helps you successfully grow delicious onions in your own garden. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to share the joy of planting with us. See you in the garden.